information. We appreciate it. We are very blessed and fortunate to have our next presenter. And David Kirkman is the author of Elder Fraud Wars, and you heard about that from Amy's presentation today. He is the former Special Deputy Attorney General with the North Carolina Department of Justice, served as an enforcement attorney in the department's Consumer Protection Division from 1987 until 2017, and created and managed its Elder Fraud Unit. In the mid-90s, David organized and helped lead a task force of prosecutors and law enforcement officers from 45 state, local, and federal agencies to address a large Rocky Mount-based home repair fraud ring that targeted elderly homeowners throughout North Carolina and Virginia. Over the next 3 years, members of that task force brought more than 500 felony charges against members of that fraud ring. He knows what he's talking about. He's been there, done that. He's got the t-shirt. The elder fraud industry, stealing your savings, identity, and more. We're going to learn the battled international elder fraud industry throughout this 30 years with the North Carolina Attorney General's Office. He will share information on its psychological techniques, its technological sophistication, and its ability to steal our identities and our life savings. He will also discuss ways to protect ourselves. Welcome, David. Come and share with us. There you go. All right.
I had to turn on my timer just then, because otherwise I wouldn't shut up.
Just keep going. Yeah.
Let's see. There I am. Well, thank you to NCBAM and Stan and Amy and for inviting me to be here today. I got a promotion. I was just going to be a vendor to sell my book, but then I got the big call that every basketball player, football player ever wants to get off the bench, get in there and play. And so now I'm honored to be able to speak to you. And I always worry as a lawyer standing at the podium in a church, but I want to do it justice, just like you would expect. And so I want to talk about the elder fraud industry, which is a phrase that I think I coined. I don't think anybody talked about elder fraud 30 years ago. We in the consumer protection industry didn't talk about elder fraud back in 1990, but by 1992, it was on our lips almost every minute of the day because something was born back then, the elder fraud industry. Now, when I talk about the elder fraud industry, what am I really talking about? Is it the opportunistic grandchild or niece and nephew who starts to exploit grandma because she's starting to become senile or have dementia? No, it's not. They're not the elder fraud industry. Is it the opportunistic neighbor who insinuates themselves into the finances of this older person, or maybe a pastor or an insurance agent or a banker? It's not them either. Those types of people have been with us for thousands of years, people who see a vulnerable older adult and they exploit that person financially and in other ways. But the elder fraud industry is actually composed of criminal organizations that actually started getting off the ground back around late 1980s, early 1990s. They went from getting a couple of $1 million a year from Americans to now getting billions and billions of dollars a year. I would estimate about $40 billion a year. And they are a global industry. And they don't just pick on us, they pick on people all around the world. Now, some of these members of the elder fraud industry you're aware of. You've probably heard about sweepstakes scams and lottery scams. These people are based mainly in these countries: Canada, Jamaica, Great Britain, Costa Rica, the Philippines, and then the former Soviet Union, places Russia, Moldova, Ukraine, that have been in the news lately. And they are still some of the worst actors out there. They're going to reach out to you by telephone and by internet and tell you you've won a lottery, you've won a sweepstakes, and next thing you know, they want you to pay taxes, want you to pay attorney's fees, customs duties, and they can actually, by repeatedly hitting you, get your entire life savings. You see here on the screen a former Fortune 500 company executive who lives in Asheville lost $900,000 to the sweepstakes scam. A lottery scam victim was a former Marine colonel, and then later he was a security officer in one of the banks down in Jacksonville. He has lost $600,000 to lottery scammers. Grandparent scams, you all have heard about that, I'm sure. They are some of the best out there because they actually research you, they research your grandchildren, they learn everything they can about you and your grandchildren, what your grandchildren call you, where your grandchildren might be on vacation. These scammers are based out of Canada and again, the former Soviet Union. And who they are Russian mobsters. They are the Russian mobsters. They're also the people who are doing a lot of these internet scams right now, but they are the most professional. And they get money out of you very rapidly, usually over the course of a few days before you figure out that your grandson is not in jail in Mexico. He's up at Appalachian State in his dorm. But the worst victimization we saw when I was in the Attorney General's office was a woman in Charlotte who lost $65,000. Home repair scams. This home repair group that Stan was mentioning a while ago that's based right here in Wake County and in 2 counties over in Rocky Mount, they very easily can get $100,000 per victim. And it's not unusual for them to get more than that, and it's almost a run-of-the-mill thing for them to get $30,000 per victim. And they do most of their scams face-to-face. They don't use the internet. Obviously, you can't rip somebody off with a phony claim that their chimney's going to fall down unless you're right there on the doorstep. Or they might tell you you've got a hole in your roof and they need to fix it. They have to be face-to-face. So some of the worst scams you see up there for your home repair, over $250,000 victim in Cary, somebody who does driveway repair scams, he got $80,000 out of a retired UNC Greensboro professor over in the Greensboro area. Now, sweetheart scams. A lot of these are based out of West Africa, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Senegal, countries like that. These people are also very, very professional. They're going to reach out to you if you've been through a divorce or your spouse has died. They're going to see it on the internet. They're going to see it in the newspapers. They're going to reach out and contact you over the internet or over the telephone, become your friend, become your boyfriend or girlfriend. And next thing you know, you're engaged to this person. And that's when they start asking you for money. They're in all kinds of trouble. They're in the hospital. They're in jail. And you can see here the worst victim we came across in North Carolina from the sweetheart scam, she lost $1.2 million. She was a bank company executive. She should have known better. But these people are so good. Let's see. So they're basically from the same West African countries and from Europe, but also some of the worst sweetheart scammers out there are prisoners in our prisons, state and federal prisons here in the United States. And they will scam you and target you using cell phones that have been smuggled in to the prison. I keep going the wrong way. You've probably heard of these Nigerian princess scams where somebody claims that they've got all this money over in some foreign country and it's a little bit dirty and they want you to help them, get the money into the United States. And if you help them move $24 million through your bank account, you'll get to keep a third of that, $8 million. That's an old scam. That's been around about 20, 30 years. And again, it's from these same West African countries. Look how bad a victimization we had in Charlotte from these guys. $3.4 million. It was a business executive. Don't worry, he had plenty of money left after he lost the $3.4 million. But it just shows you how much you can lose. It's not unusual to get a report in the Attorney General's office that somebody's lost $10,000 or $30,000 to these people. Have you heard of this scam, the Treasury agent scam or the IRS scam? It was really big about 4 or 5 years ago. Everybody in the country was getting robocalls from somebody claiming to be from the IRS. You haven't paid your taxes, you're going to be arrested right away unless you go wire money to this address in Delhi, India to pay your taxes. And sure enough, that's where this scam was based. A lot of these people in call centers in India who work for legitimate companies, U.S. companies, during the day, at night will actually break bad, and they'll pretend to be these Treasury agents or these IRS agents, or sometimes they'll run the jury duty scam. You haven't reported for jury duty, pay your fine right now. So that's where a lot of these are coming from. So you can see it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's multinational. They're just based all over the globe. Cyber criminals, they are everywhere. Anybody who's got a computer can be a cyber criminal. They can find out all the information they need to about you. They can steal your identity very easily. They don't even have to do what they did to Amy's dad, where they do the old-fashioned go through the mailbox. They can find a lot of information about you online very, very easily. And some of the worst actors in the cyber crime and identity theft criminal sphere are based out of India. Again, it's these same call centers and computer support centers, and China. If you have a problem with your computer and you call for help, who are you talking to? It's somebody in one of these countries. They have so many people in these countries who know how to talk to Americans. They know, what you're concerned about. They are going to, pretend to be your tech support guy. They're going to call you up and say, Mr. Kirkman, you've got a problem with your computer. You need to log on to this link. Press this link on your computer. And the next thing you know, they've got total access to your computer. And if they have access to my computer, they have access to all my retirement funds, my banking accounts, my Social Security stuff. They can change my phone number. They can do all of these things remotely from these other countries. The dark net. Has anybody heard of the dark net? The dark net has been around since about 2003, and it does have some helpful information for people who are in countries like Russia right now who want to find out what's really going on in the world. They can log on to the dark net and get legitimate news. But really, the dark net contains a lot of stuff that's nothing but pure crime. And one of the things that is easiest to buy on the dark net is your personal information. Your personal information. They've got information on me. I've seen it. I had somebody go on the dark web and look for information on David Kirkman, and yeah, there it was. There was my Social Security number, some of my old passwords for getting into my bank account, my dogs, when I was a young boy, because people use the names of their pets as passwords. There was all this information on the dark web about me, and there probably is about you too. Because your information is out there, because it's actually already been stolen in many cases, there's some things you should do proactively before people start impersonating you, pretending to be you. And the first thing they're going to do is go out and try to take out loans, as you heard from Amy earlier. So there's things you can do to stop this. You can use complex passwords on your computer and change them regularly if they're for major, say, financial programs like your bank account or your retirement account. Use two-factor authentication whenever you're logging on to one of these very sensitive accounts. I mean, if you have a News and Observer account, you don't have to change your password for that. The scammers don't want to read the News and Observer over there in India. But all these important accounts, you should do these things to. But use two-factor authentication where they're going to send a text to your cell phone, and you type that in before they let you into that account. That is the most effective way to stop these people over in India or wherever they are. Freeze your credit reports. How many people here have frozen their credit reports? That's a pretty good number. Mine is frozen. I just saw what happens to so many people, when their identity is stolen. The scammers can't do much if they can't get credit in your name, and they can't get credit in your name unless they have access to your credit report. And if your credit file is frozen, nobody's going to give credit to the scammer. Now, if you need to go out and buy yourself a new Mercedes-Benz or whatever kind of car you're going to buy, you can have your credit freeze lifted for 1 day so that the car company can run a credit search on you, and then it closes back down. So it doesn't mean you'll never get credit again. It just means scammers can't take your identity via the credit report. Check your credit reports regularly. Amy talked about that. The best way to do it is through annualcreditreport.com, not freecreditreport.com because they're not free, but annualcreditreport.com. Limit your, get good security on your computer, like Amy was saying, Norton or McAfee or some of these other programs. They will actually block out all these crazy emails that you might be getting from scammers. And they also offer identity theft protection services where they will actually call you up and say, did you open up this account? Limit the personal information about yourself on social media. If you're on Facebook, get your children and grandchildren not to list too much information about you on Facebook, because that's what these Russian mobsters look for. They go straight to the grandchild's Facebook or your Facebook and learn all the information about you. So be very frugal in what you post about yourself on Facebook. And if you see one of these little quizzes on Facebook, you know, what was your first grade school teacher's name? What was your first pet's name? These are security question quizzes or password quizzes. The people on the dark web are looking for the names of your first pet, your first girlfriend or boyfriend, where you met, because those are typical security questions when you're logging into one of these accounts. And sure enough, as soon as you respond to one of those quizzes and type in the name of your first love, it's sold on the dark web to every scammer out there. Which of these different frauds have gone craziest during the pandemic? Do you have any ideas? All of them. You're right, all of them. So we don't have to go through them again. But getting particularly bad are these ones from the Amazon scam, the FedEx scam, where they say there's a problem with your package, please log in by clicking this button. And they want you to enter your password for your Amazon account. Next thing you know, they've got your whole Amazon account, which has your credit card number on there, and they're buying all kinds of stuff. So these are some of the worst things that have been going on since the pandemic began. You might also get text messages. This is one I got a couple of weeks ago, wanting me to, because of a so-called problem with my subscription, wanting me to click this thing. If I click that link, the next thing you know, they would have total access to whatever is in my cell phone, which includes my bank account and my retirement account, and everything else that's on my computer is pretty much on my phone. So had I touched that with my finger, they would have my entire identity right then and there. Why do these people target folks in our generation? I'm a baby boomer. Most of you are. Some of you are in the generation ahead of us, the so-called silent generation. Why do they target us? Trusting. Retirement funds, have a steady income. That's a good one. Less computer savvy. Any others? Pardon? Loneliness. Yep. These are all the different reasons for them trying to scam us. But the main reason is we've got the money. The younger generations don't. We have, I think it's twice the amount of money of the so-called Generation X. I never turned my timer on. So sorry. We have twice the amount of money per person, $250,000 supposedly. We all have $250,000 of net personal worth. And the Generation X has half of that. Generations Y and Z and the millennials, they have 1/10 of that. So we're the ones with the money. That's the main reason they're targeting us. Like there was this famous bank robber who was once asked, why do you rob banks? Let's see if I can find him here. Willie Sutton was asked, why do you rob banks? And he told the FBI, it's because that's where the money is. And we're where the money is, and that's why they're coming after us. That's why this elder fraud industry was born. So we talked about some of these vulnerabilities. Somebody talked about loneliness. That's number 8 up there. The fixed income, financial insecurity is another concern. A lot of people are worried they're not going to make it to the end. But easy access to funds is another one. Retirees often do have retirement incomes in the form of a pension or 401k. Their homes are paid off. They have complete equity in their home so they can go get a loan and pay that to the scammers. These are various reasons why scammers target us. As we get older, we become more obsessed with certain things. Sometimes it's cleanliness. Sometimes it's keeping our house well maintained. Sometimes it's sweepstakes. Something like 20% of all people really are into sweepstakes. And as they get older and older, they become obsessed with sweepstakes. That's why all these sweepstakes scammers are out there going after us. And I am totally messing myself up. But number 12 up there, I'll skip some of these other ones, but number 12 is the most important one, age-related cognitive decline. As you become older, your ability to process things mentally and cognitively goes down, and it starts going down at what age? 27. It begins in your late 20s. Almost as soon as your brain develops to the point where you can make mature decisions, it starts to decline. And by the time you're in your late 40s, it can become noticeable through testing. And by the time you're in your 60s, it'll definitely become noticeable to your spouse, as my wife tells me all the time. She says, "You've got cognitive decline, Dave. You couldn't remember what I told you to buy at the grocery store." But no, seriously, if you're 65 or older, you have a 10% chance of being in the early stages of Alzheimer's. If you're 74, you have a 25% chance. This is the very early stages, and that's when you're most vulnerable to scams because you cannot process the information these scammers are throwing at you. And by the time you're 84, and a lot of our victims were in their 80s, there's a 50% chance. So this too is a main reason why the scammers, when they go fishing for vulnerable people, they go after this age group. So one of the things the scammers are going to do, whether it's telling you your grandchild is in jail in Mexico or you've won something, is they're going to make the initial and all subsequent communications to you very exciting. You know, you're going to get 1/3 of 24 million, or your grandchild's being beaten up in a Mexican jail. You need to do something about this right now. It's always something to knock you off balance. And then they're going to start throwing all these instructions at you as fast as they can because they know you probably can't process it because you're in this excited or upset state. And that's when they have you in their hands. That's when the professionals in this elder fraud industry are going to get you for all these huge sums of money that we've been talking about. You'll also know that you're being scammed, even if you fall prey to their pitch. There's always an alarm bell that's going to go off that you should know, or your family should know, and that's when they ask you to pay a certain way. No legitimate sweepstakes company, no IRS agent, none of these people, if they're actually legitimate, will ask you to pay using MoneyGram or Western Union wire transfers. And they're also not going to ask you to pay by going to buy $3,000 worth of gift cards at CVS Pharmacy and then read the numbers off the back when you get into your car. Nobody who's legitimate ever asks you to do that. So if you're sort of drowning in this sea of love, you think you have some sweetheart over in a foreign country who's going to marry you, or you think your grandchild is in jail, and then you hear the request to pay by buying these debit cards or by wiring money, that's the alarm. That's the siren. That's the red and blue flashing lights. You should know at that point that these people are scamming you. Hang up, click off the computer, get away from them as fast as you can. So again, these are some more ways you can help protect yourself. Know all the various scams. All these scams we talked about today, try to learn more about them if you can. Share them with your friends. You'll learn from them the types of scams they've been subjected to. He ain't real until he hands you flowers. If you've got an online boyfriend who's some strapping looking guy, but you've never met him and he's asking you for money, he ain't real. If he shows up at your front door, he probably still isn't real. Just be careful. Check your credit report regularly through annualcreditreport.com. Freeze your credit report, as I said. Check out the pitch. If somebody's coming to your house and saying your chimney's about to fall off, call the Attorney General's office right away. And the number is 8775, no scam. Or if you live here in Raleigh, 716-6000. Or these people have better hours than the Attorney General does because they have people online up until 9 o'clock. Call the AARP Fraud Watch Network, and they will talk you through whether this is a scam pitch or not. So I don't have any time left for questions, but just as Amy said before, I'll be out, in the fellowship hall. I'll be glad to talk to you if you have any particular things you'd like to talk about. And I'm sorry about my voice giving out. This is my first public presentation in 2 years, so it's out of practice. But really, stay safe. Thank you for being an elder fraud warrior. Thank you for spreading this amongst your congregation and your friends. All these things that you've learned today, this is a fabulous program, and the people who put it on should be most proud. Thank you.